Hello, welcome to Philosophy, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with George Ortega, Trick Slattery, Yuri, and WSD Time.
Yeah.
Yeah! Okay, and so the topic that I had suggested for this episode is that you're discussing why people view certain animals as pets. And they take care of them and love them. They're great companions. But then another animal of a different species is considered food. And because I'm aware people are conditioned to think this way by their culture. Whatever. If you grow up in a country where people eat horses and slugs, then you're probably going to grow up eating that. Whereas somebody else wouldn't think of it, maybe because slugs are gross, or maybe because they love horses, like I do. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of just open-ended, we could discuss this, what guys, of course you guys have all lived different lives. In your mind, let's say when you were a kid, what was going through your mind? You probably had a dog or a cat, as most people do. And how did you view them as opposed to how you viewed another animal? Like anything, it could be a mosquito, or it could be an elephant. Like does anyone want to jump in with that?
Well, I think that people are, do the way we're indoctrinated. Yeah, I think that may have a lot to do with it. The fact that, we take care of this cute, fluffy cat over a, ugly looking roach or insect. Yeah, I think that
Yeah,
has a lot to do with it.
yeah, and I know WSD, you don't like bugs very much.
No, I don't.
Yeah, and I think that's understandable. I think that based on the behavior of certain animals, we're going to like some of them more than others. Not many people like bugs, especially the kind that bite you and crawl over you, because it's not a pleasant thing.
Or suck your blood.
Yeah, they
Like
suck.
those God forbid bugs. You better hope you'll never get those little bastards.
Oh, we used to have them at our old apartment in Kansas City, Kansas. Man, it was bad. So yeah, I understand why people don't like those types of bugs. So what about here's something. How about cats and dogs? Do you guys like cats or dogs better? And can you explain that?
Uh, I'm more I'm more of a cat person, even though I love dogs and cats equally. I'm more of a answer this. I'm more of a cat person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe because I grew up with them mainly.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you grow up with. Like I've grown up with dogs,
Yeah.
so it's just a conditioning thing. But
And the place
regards to like
oh, sorry, the
like
place I'm at don't allow dogs. Yeah.
oh yeah, that too, yeah.
Yeah. So that might be another. Yeah.
Yeah. What
But
were you?
in regards to this like lack of cognitive dissonance, this idea that people can basically have a pet dog, but at the same time like uh, don't really make the same type of associations with pigs. So, for example, if they're dogs, if dogs were placed in the same situation as pigs, people in this country, at least the U.S., would have a problem with that. They take issue with that because they put dogs on pedestals over pigs, for example. But in other countries, dogs are like pigs. They're used as meat, basically. So so it all depends on what culture you were born up in, right? You were raised in. So it's definitely has to do with cultural conditioning, and in regards to what animals we consider food and what animals we consider pets, basically. So that's kind of a problem, especially considering pigs are just as intelligent as dogs, right? They're not any less intelligent. They're pretty much they're big dogs, basically. So it's just what we're raised to think is improper when suffering occurs. Now, a lot of times when we just go to the supermarket, we buy meat and stuff like that. Go ahead, Yuri.
What was that, Yuri?
So I was going to ask Trick, do dogs make good bacon? Do dogs make good bacon?
I've never eaten them, but
I'm sure I never thought of that.
In certain countries, they probably do. That's the problem. So in certain countries, they're like I said, they're livestock, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically, I mean,
I can remember.
You can go ahead, Yuri. If you still have something to say.
I can remember as a kid. So we had a couple of bunnies as pets, or at least that's what I thought. We came home from holiday one day, and the bunnies had gone. And, I was probably about 5 years old, if that. And my parents sort of said, oh, they must have escaped, or the gypsies took them, or something like that. And I just can't help wondering if a couple of weeks later we had rabbit stew or not.
Yeah, so that's one animal, for example, that people
I personally don't have a problem with it.
People raise rabbits here to eat, and at the same time people have rabbits as pets. So that's one situation where there's kind of a mix going on there. Like you can have a pet rabbit, or you could raise rabbits for meat. And I think usually you don't mix the two. Usually it's one or the other. And when the people that have rabbits for pets usually probably don't eat them. So it's whatever you're culturally conditioned, or whatever you're conditioned to accept, basically.
Yeah, I watched this video on YouTube of Miley Cyrus was being interviewed by somebody, and she was telling how, she has a pet pig and a pet goldfish. And so she loves her goldfish and feeds it, and all that, but then she would be going to a restaurant and eating fish. And she didn't feel right about that. She noticed the inconsistency, and she ended up going vegan, because she couldn't see why is one fish a pet and another fish is food. It's weird when those moments happen and you realize there's something strange.
I honestly think that if you ask children about the food they eat, like if they know that they eat chicken, or they know that they eat beef or things like that, if you ask them what that really means, they probably don't really truly make the connection to real chickens or real cows. A lot of times they're just given the meat, and they don't make that association until later in life when they realize there's a connection there, and then by that time they're just accustomed to eating meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a question.
Like me, for example.
Here's a question, guys. Basically, what we eat and don't eat, as you guys are saying, is culturally conditioned. It depends on, what animals we have as pets, what animals our culture has traditionally eaten and not eaten. So I think where we're going, though, is what can we do to heighten that awareness so that people who don't have, for example, pigs as pets, make that connection. Pigs are more intelligent than dogs. I mean, how can we move from the world the way it is now to, I think, the world where we want, just people to just have a respect for all animals, regardless of what their particular culture tends to respect now?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, and that's, I think, easier said than done, because people are able to partition these ideas. Like if someone's raised, for example, in the condition of a family that has a slaughterhouse, if they're raised in that environment, they'll never make that association. They'll always see animals as this food because they've already, I guess, become so accustomed to slaughtering animals basically that it's not seen as anything problematic for them. So that's kind of a problem.
All right, but Trick, you got. I mean, unfortunately, like for example, 90.
No, it's not a problem, Trick.
Factory farms. There's 1% that are really family farms, and so like basically this population that has direct contact with these animals is extremely minute, compared to the relative population of the world.
What is? I'm sorry. Say that again, George. What's minute?
Well, because there aren't that many factory. 1% of farms here in the United States are actually family farms. The rest are factory farms. So the people who are, for example, you may have, let's say, 10 people caring for 30,000 chickens in a breeding area. So basically, the amount of people that kind of like you were saying wouldn't be affected because they're slaughtering them. Fortunately, that's a very, very minute portion of the population.
Right. And then you're right. And then you take into account people that they're just raised. They're not raised slaughtering animals, which is the majority of people. The majority of people just go to the grocery store and pick up a slab of beef, and they don't really make the association, right? So those are the people that we're really trying to focus on here. And to make that connection, they have to care enough to I guess reassociate the meat with something that they're concerned with, because I think people meat like when I was a meat eater long time ago, but I didn't make that association, and even when I did, I knew there was I came from cows and stuff like that, but I didn't really. It's like when you're watching on the television, you see, you know that there's people starving in other countries, right? But until you actually see it, like you see one of those infomercials where you have the kids with the bellies and things like that, and they're in starving mode. Until you actually see it, you don't ever that that happens, but you just partition it away. You don't have the, your day-to-day life is unconcerned with that fact, basically, right? So I think the same thing happens with meat eaters. They eat the meat, but they don't really think any more of it, basically.
Yeah.
Right, and I think you're right. I think that the answer to both is probably the same.
Trick.
Whatever that answer
Wait.
Your conversation before.
What's that, Yuri? Yuri?
Trick. Basically, as your resident omnivore,
Yes.
I'm sort of having a little bit of problem with the language we're using here.
Okay. Well, that's good that you're here then.
And
So, what type of
in some way
language?
a derogatory term.
Like what?
So what I'm saying is, so basically, there's a it's a little bit of a side debate I have on occasion with you, is this moral ethic stance.
Right.
And until I am convinced that there is a moral ethic stance to be taken, and it's not just vegetarianism or whatever, it's just this view of the world. Like fish eat fish, cats eat cats, dogs eat dogs.
So you'd be fine if humans ate babies?
Nope.
If humans ate human babies?
If they did it, I personally wouldn't do it. But then again,
no, I mean, you'd be fine if they enslaved women
about my judgment.
If you'd be fine if they enslaved women to procreate, and then they took the babies and they ate them. That would be okay, right?
No.
I'm not saying I'd be fine about it. I'm just saying I wouldn't look at it as an ethical or moral issue.
Well, because you're an ethical nihilist, but obviously that's another issue altogether. And
I'm proud of that.
Well, Jerry, wait a minute. What are your ethics? What are ethics to you?
Well, I like to try and be amoral and not look at things in terms of right or wrong. And I try to be a bit more honest with myself. You guys can do what you like, but
all right. So if somebody went over to your house and just like
basically
lit it on fire, just blew it up, you'd be fine with that.
Oh hell no!
I never said that.
I would
then if somebody
never said that.
Somebody did that.
But yeah.
All right, hold on.
I'm thinking I wouldn't look at it.
If somebody did that to a friend of yours, you'd be fine with that.
I'm not saying that either.
Well, then you are a moralist.
What I'm saying is,
you're not amoral.
From a moral perspective.
Do you think there should be laws, Yuri? Do you think there should be laws against anything?
I would just look at it very simply. Yeah, I do think there should be laws. Yeah, I have absolutely no problems with laws.
On what basis do you think there should be laws?
They should be addressed in moral, ethical terms.
How do you have laws that aren't addressed in non-moral terms? Like, give me an example of a law that's addressed in non-moral terms.
Thou shalt not speed.
Okay, so the reason we have speeding laws is why?
Safety. That's so people don't crash going at high velocity.
Right, so they don't kill people. So it's a harm ratio, right? So we have a cost-benefit analysis that goes on. That's a fully ethical position.
Well,
yeah, Yuri, I think what Trick is saying is you can't create a law without applying morals.
See it as ethics.
But that's what it is. It's a consequentialist.
You might not be able to, but other people can.
Yuri, how are you defining ethics?
No, it's so.
Yuri,
George,
how do you define
ultimately,
ethics?
what you're saying is, how do I, looking at things in a good or bad light? So, to me, it's a leftover from religion that we're not quite shaking.
Okay, but you're not. See, it isn't, because ethics throughout the history of ethics hasn't always been religious. I mean, we have a whole philosophical history of consequentialist ethics, of virtue ethics, of deontology, all these different ethical fields, moral realism, nihilism, moral subjectivism. So these are all non-religious ideas of ethical and moral concepts that don't entail religious morality. So
yeah, I would agree with that, Trick, because I mean, ethics or morality, even if you don't want to call it ethics morality, some sort of where we weigh the pros and cons about reducing harm and gaining pleasure. There's all these different theories of morality that don't even have to do with religions, and in fact are absolutely opposed to what all the mainstream religions are teaching. So yeah, I don't think it's leftover.
Most utilitarian ethics are. I mean,
guys, I think Yuri, I think we're basically in a certain sense arguing semantics, which you kind of like call, let's say, not right. We might call immoral and all. But I think we agree that some things are more preferable, more desirable. Some things are less desirable. So I mean, because I think we're in agreement on that. So can we return to kind of like how we can get people, for example, to not want to participate in the torture or the cruelty toward animals and because I think if we were to go on with this, I think you and we would agree that.
Okay, George. George, I would say the vast majority of people don't want to torture animals. So just saying reduce that want, it to me isn't logical.
All right, well, let's go with that. So, all right, I would agree with you. And because I think the vast majority of people have no idea that these animals are being tortured. So I think that's part of the solution. But what else is needed?
Okay. For example, personally, I avoid chicken because of the way it's farmed. Doesn't mean I won't eat chicken. I happen to live in a very rural area, so it's very easy for me to get essentially chicken that has been grown in, we can say, a more responsible way, if you like.
It's easy cutting in and out.
Yeah, well,
he's cutting it out. But...
Yeah, no, you're cutting in and out a lot, but I think it's with your connection. This happens a lot with when you talk and all. But so all right, we understand that. So like the chickens that you're eating, you can be relatively sure that they're not being tortured, and then and I don't see much, if anything, wrong with that. If they live a good lives and the torture is like relatively or the slaughter is relatively painless, doesn't seem like much harm being done. But what do people like? For example, a lot of people here in the United States know that they're eating beef and chicken and pork from farms that really torture animals, but they just don't care enough. I mean, can we try to figure out why they don't care? I mean,
yeah, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the psychology of this. Why people actually do. I think it's mostly that they're not aware. So there's that aspect that people, once they become aware, then they change. But then there's also people who don't care, and what causes them not to care is an interesting talk altogether.
Right, and I think part of it's a convenience factor too. People like I said, partition things away for a very a number of reasons. One of them is convenience. So if it's less costly, for example, to buy this meat over this meat, even though this one comes from a factory farm that isn't the best, then they'll buy the cheaper meat because it's cheaper. So they're able to partition that stuff away, even though, but they don't really understand the difference most of the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, there was this guy who used to call me. He was a Jehovah's Witness, and he wanted to talk religion. Yeah, I kept on bringing up animal cruelty, and so like basically he stopped calling because I think he began to get it, and he didn't want to get it. He wanted to continue eating meat. So once his conscience became awakened to this, he just shut off. He doesn't call because he doesn't want his conscience awakened anymore.
Yeah, well, that's the other part about it is people, because they've become so accustomed to it, and because they become so indoctrinated that when they're confronted, a lot of times they will vehemently go against that. They'll look for any reason to give justification for their position, basically, right? So. And then this usually they don't look at all the facts. They'll look at specific parts of facts. For example, someone might say, you have a vitamin deficiencies that occur, and they might use that as a factor or something like that when you're a vegan.
But
things like that.
Trick, I have a feeling that a lot of people, are ultimately confronted with the fact that it's wrong, and they don't have an excuse. They don't have, they recognize how wrong it is, but then I think they tell themselves, well, everybody's doing it. In other words, they tell themselves something to justify it, even though they know it's really wrong.
Oh yeah, well, the fact that the masses do it too gives more justification, right? So if they were in the minority, I think that they would see things a little differently, right?
I wish I could, though, too. If I run, it'll do that. Yeah, see? Yeah, it'll do that.
What's that?
What you talking about, WSD?
Ah, crap. I forgot to mute my mic. Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry about that, fellas.
that's all right. Yeah, so what was Trick saying before that?
Oh no, go ahead. That was it. I finished what I had to say. So
Well, that's interesting. There is that the fact that people are that the majority of people do it, that somehow that makes it okay, and which is weird because why would that even make sense? Like, why does the majority of people doing something is that used as a defense for something?
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I mean, like we live in a world like with the threat of climate change, but how many of us kind of like don't buy plastic? I mean, it's a relatively more benign kind of like transgression. It's not as serious, not as harmful. But we live in a kind of a world where it's kind of like for a lot of people just so difficult to go against the norm.
yeah, and like I said, we're creatures of habit. We're creatures of indoctrinations. We're creatures, and people in first world countries like us, we run on energy and all these things that create problems for people in third world countries like slave labor camps and things like that. But we don't recognize that when we're buying our products a lot of times, and so it's just so hard to be ethically perfect at all times, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In fact, that's actually a good comparison because when you buy clothes or you buy shoes, you don't have a clue where it comes from. How many of us can actually even know that unless you get on the internet and search every brand of shoes?
Yeah, which can be hard to do. Because sometimes I've been looking at where my stuff been coming from lately. I've been looking at stuff like that. It can be a little taxing on that because it can be hard if you don't got the patience to do so.
So when we're buying clothes, all right, admittedly it's hard, but when we're buying meat, at least here in the United States, again, 99% of the farms are CAFOs. They're factory farms where a lot of torture comes, is routine. So sometimes it's like how to reach these people, and I think one approach may be to reach them through self-interest. Meaning, for example, like here in the United States, 80 to 90% of people believe in God or a higher power. So what happens is you use that belief and you say, well, if you believe in God, you probably believe that, when you die, you're either going to heaven or hell. And then if the message could be that if you're eating these pigs and these cows and these chickens that have been tortured and you're complicit in that, there's no way you're getting into heaven. That kind of message may resonate with them.
Yeah, but the problem with that, George, is that religion is used in the other way. Like the Bible gives justification that animals are here are provided for man, basically for mankind.
Well, Trick. When I speak, I talk with Jehovah's Witnesses, with just various, because they come into town, they talk to us, and it's like basically I bring up that argument, and no, they get it. They get that like there is a prohibition in the Bible, in religion, against being cruel toward animals. But
I don't see that at all in the Bible. In the Bible, I see God telling them to sacrifice animals for God's sake, basically. I mean, sacrificial lambs in the Bible, right? So
what he said.
Yeah. Put the blood of animals on the top of the doorstep, right? So, or top of the
for example,
door frame.
With Judaism, there was like the kosher laws, and the kosher laws, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they try to slaughter the animals in the most humane way possible. So that's part of the Jewish tradition, and that got translated into Christianity. And then the idea is like back then in biblical times, nobody was torturing animals. Yeah, they were slaughtering them, but animals, had healthy, lives before they were slaughtered. It's like nothing the way it is now. But they still did have certain laws that like, before you feed yourself, you feed your animals and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So I think we might be able to focus more on the conditions of animals rather than the fact that people are eating animals, right? So the conditions of factory farming and things like that. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with the Bible, so I'm not sure if there's anything that says in the Bible that they should be treating the animals well throughout, their life and then until they're slaughtered or whatever. But
it's one of those things, like there's a statement or two, but like it's definitely in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, I don't know of anything in the Bible like that. But one thing is, my thought is, like, supposing that we did this thing, like, let's say that we like people have a bunch of children and they live a good life for 10 years, and then when they're 10 years old, they're slaughtered and eaten. So, like, I have a feeling a lot of people like me still are not okay with that, even if they live a happy life until then. There still seems something strange about it, that you raise them the entire time and view them as something as food.
Right. Yeah, this is a little problem, of course.
So, Chandler, where does your conditioning for that come from?
Well, I'm not exactly sure.
Where's that conditioning come from? You've been conditioned to think that way. Why?
Well,
what's the cause?
Well, what's ironic about it is, by all accounts, I should be just the opposite, since I was conditioned in Christianity, for the first 24 years of my life I should be totally okay with killing. I should be okay with killing, and you know what I mean? Because God commands killing and the animal sacrifices. So
you've swapped one set of conditioning for a second set of conditioning.
I think it really more comes from the fact that we can understand that we would not want to be in that position. So if we were in that position, we wouldn't want to be the one that was slaughtered at age 10 or whatever. So it's the fact of empathy that we can understand that we, the people that made it past that age, don't want to be in that circumstance where we're being raised as cattle, basically. So it's just the fact that we can make that relation, basically, that we can account for it.
Yeah, because the empathy.
But there's a whole bunch of conditioning behind that as well.
Oh yeah, well maybe you can have the pig that wants to be eaten, or the cow that wants to be eaten, like you said, in the conditioned way. But I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah, well, I don't.
Oh, but Trick, you've been conditioned.
Yes, everybody's been conditioned. That's.
Yeah, no one's claiming they've never been
conditioned. So basically, what we're doing is comparing my conditioning to your conditioning.
What's that?
And we're saying one's better than the other in some way. We're comparing my conditioning to your conditioning and saying one is better in some moral or ethical way. Whatever that is.
One's better because it doesn't it causes less harm. Usually it's a harm cost benefit ratio.
Yeah. See, that's the thing.
So harm.
So what do you mean it doesn't? So obviously raising a child till age 10 and then taking them out is going to cause a lot of harm, probably to the parents, probably to the child at some point. I mean, there's a whole number of reasons why it would cause so much harm to do such a thing.
Because we're conditioned that way. We're conditioned. It's like there was an old sci-fi film where people at the age of 60 got taken away and never got seen again. They had to
was that the
give up their lives, and
Soylent Green one?
It was okay until somebody thought it wasn't.
Is that one, the Soylent Green one, or?
I can't remember the name of the film, but yeah, it could have been that one.
Where they're eating the humans because that's all they had.
Until yeah, but there's nothing. I'm not suggesting we go that way, but I'm just saying just be aware of whatever position we hold. It's conditioning.
Right. I know. I understand what you're saying. Like so for example, in that scenario, the problem was the humans never knew what they were eating, and they never knew that they were actually being taken out of the game or whatever. They just thought they were going to this other place, basically. So that psychological thing happened. But then when people found out, that's when all the problems happened, because of their psychologies, right? So and their psychology said, I don't want to be in that situation, right? So but I don't think you can get past that psychology. And then we have to account for that in our ethical theory. We have to understand that.
Okay, but then again, you're looking. But Chandler, we're looking at that through our current eyes of conditioning.
Yes, and nobody disagrees.
Or the eyes of our current conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yuri. So our challenge is to find a way to recondition us. Absolutely.
No, but hold on. That's your conditioning. It's not my conditioning.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't matter, because at this point it's not about your harm; it's about other creatures' harm. So if your conditioning is that it's okay to harm other creatures, then that's the issue. And now, if you could condition those animals to not feel pain and not suffer, then that's a totally different situation. At that point, then yeah, your conditioning argument works.
But ultimately, Trick, you're saying you're basically holding do no harm at some very high level.
Not really, because we could actually survive without eating meat. So I mean, I'm all for example, in vitro meat.
No,
I'm all for.
On. So you're saying.
You're totally cutting out for some reason.
Yeah, I can barely hear you myself.
Yuri, are you on broadband? Because this happens a lot when you talk. I mean.
Huh.
Yeah, I didn't hear what he said, so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, it's just on mute.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was coughing. I was on mute.
Is he talking?
But no. But when you talk, you cut in and out a lot. I mean, what kind of connection do you have?
Basically, I talk and then I stop talking. Give you guys a chance.
Oh, so that's the thing that confuses me, because he'll stop in the middle of talking, and then I think he's cutting out, whereas he's just stopping. Yeah, well, let's see. What I was gonna say is so this thing about conditioning. Yeah, everything's conditioning. Nobody's disagreeing there. But we can objectively, I think we can weigh that some conditioning leads to causing more pain than others, and we want to avoid that. And I know Yuri's going to say, well, that's your conditioning. And, well, I think, yes, but it's more than that. I don't think you have to be conditioned to not like the feeling of pain. You know what I mean?
Well, pain and suffering are intrinsically negative experiences. They're experiences that play out in brain states that, when they play out, they are negative to the creature that has to endure them, right? So that's why we're so concerned about these states.
Yeah, because we have empathy, and we don't want to cause pain to somebody else that we wouldn't want done to ourselves.
And we just understand that it's a bad experience. It's intrinsically a bad experience when it plays out.
Yeah.
So we can minimize the pain. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, that's what we're talking about. So, and we're...
Yeah. But you're basically saying eliminating the pain. But what's going to happen is it's just going to swap.
It's just going to swap? Is that what you said?
That was weird.
Yeah, well...
So
the idea is to find solutions.
What's going to happen is wild animals are going to be Sorry, I missed that.
I don't know. You said something about wild animals, but I'm actually against. Like, I'm for solving the problem with wild animal suffering as well. So I think that's another issue that we could eventually talk about is solving the problem of the wild animals. I mean, I think it's actually worse than the factory farming industry is the suffering that occurs in the wild, with evolutionary pressures. So I think that's something else.
I mean, wait a minute. Well, all right, let's explore that, Trick. You've said that before. I mean, like, all right, like, let's say, because let's try to test it out. Like, for example, a big fish swallows a little fish, right? So, like, that this little fish is being, let's say, slow.
Let's put this in the context of mammals, because really what happens is you have a pack of wolves that eat a deer, and it does it while it's alive, and it doesn't. They don't just put them out immediately. It goes through this long, drawn out process that could take an hour.
Slaughtered.
Right. That could take an hour. I mean, it's really a horrible thing. And it's not just that. You have animals that endure constant climate change, heat, extreme cold weather. They get injured and they have to go through these long, drawn out injuries. They don't have anesthesia like we do, so they go through these long, drawn out things where they eventually die, but it could take them days to die. So it's injuries, there's disease, there's parasite infestations that are constant in the wild. I mean, you have parasites just all over these animals, basically, that are eating them from the inside, eating their brains and things like that. I mean, it's just the whole thing in the wild is a horror story. So it's not just one fish eating another fish. It's just all these mechanisms that are just terrible, basically.
Yeah, I see your point there, Trick, because there's uncountable different forms of suffering that they can experience out in the wild.
Yeah, and there's way more animals in the wild too. So it's like
Trick, have you kind of like investigated in terms of, for example, the experience of shock? Like, a deer gets attacked by prey by a pack of wolves. Does it go into shock? Because it was always my understanding that all of a sudden it's like they're being like a human being would go into shock in that kind of situation.
Then you're aware that we can torture a human being, right? Right. And it's like the worst torture. I mean, I don't know if you've ever experienced like really bad pain, but it's really where you want to be. You'd rather just be put out of your misery at that point, rather than keep enduring it with another minute of it, let alone an hour. So it's like, no, I don't think they go into shock that much. I don't think that's an evolutionary advantage to do that. There's no need for that in the wild.
I was just wondering if you've done the specific research on this, whether what the findings have been. I haven't. I always just thought that they do go into shock, and I just haven't researched it beyond that.
There's a good website for it, wildlifesuffering.com, I think. The importance of animal suffering, foundationalresearch.org. The importance of wild animal suffering pretty much goes into all the details of the number of problems with the suffering in the wild.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, and even though we may disagree somewhat, some of us may disagree about the level of domesticated suffering versus wild animal suffering. I mean, we can say they're both bad, and I think like the suffering that is caused specifically by humans, that is pretty much where we're focused, because we're communicating with other humans and trying to raise awareness so that people make efforts to not contribute to the suffering.
Well, you're right, but like, for example, are we concluding that, aside from, let's say, the 1 to 2 billion people on the planet that don't have enough clean water and access to, enough food and all, that are, our suffering is tolerable as human beings? I mean, we tend to be about 70% happy. It seems like most of us, are living our lives okay. But then, like when you talk about the farm animals, then you also have to include, if there's a lot more suffering going on in wildlife, then, like, for example, what comes to my mind is, like, let's say we completely solve the factory farming problem. Then, I mean, would it be like 1% of this problem and just be so insignificant a solution?
I don't look at that as numbers in that sense. Like, it wouldn't matter if there was worlds upon worlds with suffering, as long as you have this small section that you can resolve. That is just as important as if those other worlds didn't exist and you can resolve it. So the fact that more exists doesn't really change the factor of the small set that you can change, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was kind of like leading to a more philosophical question, because let's say it was like we solve all animal suffering, factory farms, but we determine that's just 1% of all the suffering that comes to the wild, right? Naturally, we may not have the power in conventional means to solve that suffering, but like in terms of like our hopes and wishes and desires, should we then be morally desiring, for example, that life go extinct on the planet because it's much more painful than it is pleasant? Or are we going to conclude that even though there is like horrific suffering in the wildlife, those animals do, like, let's say 99% of their time enjoy their life?
I would say the first, but that's my from my position. I think because of our psychologies, we won't get to that point. So what we'll have to do is find some other mechanism, perhaps some trans-consciousness mechanism through technical advances or something like that, where nanotechnology starts replacing biology in the animal kingdom or something like that. I don't know. The future is here, right? So anything can happen. But
yeah, well, let's hypothesize a bit more. They advance these after death studies. So, like, somebody's frozen for 30 years. Thaw the guy back up. The guy gives a reasonable rendition of like that somehow, again, like, I know a lot of this may just not seem credible, but just for the sake of the hypothesis, let's say let's say if we were to kind of like know that human beings and animals somehow with some animal technology just like have a better existence not living, would that make a difference? Or I guess that hypothesis doesn't work well because you guys in general don't believe we have a soul and all. But
I'm not sure I'm getting your hypothesis. To tell you the truth.
Well, just the idea that, like, let's say we determine that, like, let's say everybody, this threat of hell is just like, it's like it doesn't exist. Like we just all go to a much better place. Our problem, not just for human beings, for other animals, is that we're like locked into this, endless cycle of birth and rebirth, here on the planet, with progeny and all that stuff. That the answer would be to kind of like extinct life, so that right. Whatever is left, our souls or whatever, would be freed from this, problem. Sure.
If there was some, I don't know, that's kind of a weird mechanism, this reincarnation mechanism, but sure.
Well, no, yeah, it would be, yeah, all right. So just philosophical, all right, but that's very hypothetical. So let's get practical again. So, like, in terms of like convincing people to either stop eating meat or to pretty much force our governments and force our companies to treat animals well, is the self-interest argument also in terms of like health? Is that something we could do? In other words, like so much heart disease and cancer and all these like diseases that we get are so tied to eating meat. and not specifically just meat, but meat that's raised in these farms.
Right. I mean, and a lot of people do that. They go to the health reasons why eating meat is problematic. I'm not a big fan of that avenue, only because I don't think I don't think that's an ethical reason. People can be as unhealthy as they want, right? Like they can drink a big thing of pop or whatever. They could do what they want to be unhealthy, and that's not really, that's their own ethical. I mean, it doesn't when it doesn't tie to other people, then they should be able to do what they want. Is my position. When it's tied to other people and other animals, then you have an ethical dilemma, right? So this health thing, you can promote it, and it's a good thing to promote, right? That eating animals is unhealthy in the for the majority of people, at least in regards to certain diseases and stuff like that. But if people, I mean, it doesn't tie into the ethical equation, in my opinion.
Well, yeah.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chandler. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, and I agree there, Truk, because, the health side of it, while true, is never something that I've really focused on, because, because if people want to be unhealthy, and they don't care about their health, it's not very compelling, so I don't find it very effective.
Well, some people might take the pleasure that they obtain early in life and sacrifice future health for that reason. So they may say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice future health, but I'm going to eat what I want and be unhealthy. That's their prerogative. Now we might be able to tie that to other things like increased costs in health care and things like that, and that does tie into a society and things like that, and that does tie into ethics at that point.
Well, yeah, it always ends up affecting others, and that's
right.
The key issue, whether it's the health or the climate change, right. So that's important to consider.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm not necessarily concerned with the ethics in terms of like people like. What I'm concerned with is alleviating as much suffering as possible. So, for example, if it turns out that people care more about themselves than they care about these animals, and so they're going to eat, less of these animals, not for the sake of the animals at all, but just to be healthier, and you can add in the healthcare costs and all. That might not be the most ethical. In other words, people aren't doing it for the best of motives, but at least it may be getting done.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there, George. If it was proven to be effective, then it achieves the goal, even if it's not for the right reason.
Right, or the best reasons, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always have.
Just a comment, in the most recent, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but in the most recent New Scientist, they were talking about sort of healthy diets, and basically we should be eating more protein, more fat, and a little bit less in terms of vegetables, but the big thing we should cut out is starch and sugars. That's sort of hot off the press.
Hey, you're cutting off again.
So basically he said starch and sugars are the big thing you should be cutting out.
I just stopped.
So yeah, so a lot of people have different, like you're
more
going to get
fats, more proteins.
You're going to get different opinions on nutrition from two different sides of this debate, right? So, and this happens online all the time. You have the people that say, oh, the animal proteins are important, blah blah blah, for optimal health, and then you have vegetarians saying no, the vegetarian or vegan diet is the most healthy, and so you have an ongoing debate there as well, right?
Yeah, and I read New Scientist on occasion. Like, for example, with free will, they've had arguments like strongly against free will, and they've had articles kind of like supporting that we have a free will. So I'm not sure I think they're just like presenting findings. I'm not sure they're all
Yeah.
They may not.
I have not seen a strong argument presented in New Scientist for free will over the last 20 years.
Oh, I have. I forget when though.
So
I don't know. Maybe 5 years ago.
basically, if they do present an argument, it's for a compatibilist form.
Yeah, well, when it comes to, people,
Sorry, you guys just cut out.
Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes it seems like you're cutting out, but yeah, like another thing is, how do people know what to believe about what is or isn't healthy? Because like I was just talking with some people on Google Hangout recently. Like, we're just taking that on faith, what some doctor or what some dietitian or nutritionist tells us, and I find that to be a very difficult thing. Like, how do you really filter that out and know what's healthy or not?
Chandler, in certain cases, I think, yes, there are gray areas. But for example, like with climate change, I mean, there is absolutely, it's so beyond question, right? Yet you have some industries, with disinformation, misinformation. So that definitely happens in healthcare. But that doesn't mean that in healthcare they don't have the right answers. It's just like there's such a profit motive for confusing people, for not allowing that right answer to get as much, publicity and dissemination as it could.
Well, yeah, I understand that, because for financial reasons, I mean, there are so many surgeries that hospitals and doctors make so much money off of, that if everyone started going vegan and they had less heart disease, less cancer, and all of these diseases, then that would be less profit for those businesses, and so there is a motive to promote the wrong information.
Yeah, but I wouldn't go that. I mean, I wouldn't. A lot of times people go to these like kind of conspiracy theories in the medical industry and I kind of have a little problem with those type of conspiracy theories. I think there'll be enough medical conditions going on that they don't have to try to make people have cancer and stuff. I mean, we're working towards cures to these types of things, right? In the medical industry.
Well, no, it's partly institutional trick. For example, like the funders of the research, of medical research, they're not going to fund research on, let's say, alternative medicines that don't cost anything, like meditation and stuff, because there's no financial incentive in that. So like there's a very strong push toward the treatments that will yield the most money. I mean, it's part of the system. It's not like people are kind of like,
Well, I do understand that. We're in a capitalistic system right now, right? So you
unfortunately,
have a lot of people working towards cures because of the profitability of that as well. So yeah, you have to take that into account, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because the motive of money is such a big part of it. I mean, how many people become doctors or lawyers because they know that's a job where they can make a lot of money? So there can be a big selfish motive for going into that field in the first place. And so people with that motive, they, like you're going to have doctors who would want people to be sick so that they have to pay them money. And you could have lawyers also, like lawyers that will defend a criminal and try to win their case, even if they think the person's guilty, just if that client pays them money, that could happen.
That's their job, Chandler.
What?
Yep.
That's their job. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it any other way.
Well,
I couldn't have that on my conscience. I'm sorry.
yeah, I agree, WSD.
There's no way I would just have that on my conscience. That's why I couldn't be a freaking lawyer. For that reason alone.
Yeah, like it's hard to imagine. Like, of course, I could probably never be a lawyer, but even if I was a lawyer,
I would definitely sabotage his shit.
Yeah, because like the way I would think about it, even if I was a lawyer, I would not take on a case unless I was convinced that the person didn't actually do the crime. If I could not take a client who I believed to have done the crime, because I would not be convincing and trying to convince anyone else they didn't.
You could be a prosecutor instead of a defendant lawyer, but.
Interesting.
And could you prosecute somebody you didn't think did it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Very good question, Yuri. Yeah, could you prosecute someone if you didn't think they did the crime?
Let me ask you guys a question. I think I think probably everyone but me here kind of like believes that we just die and, that's it. We're here 80, 100 years and we die. We didn't exist before. We didn't exist after. So let's go with that, let's say that's the way it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like we're all aware that, the known universe has been around for 13.8 billion years, and who knows how long it's been before and after all that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, does it ever kind of like seem like, I mean, what the fuck? I mean, like it's is considering that our lifespan is such a sliver within this, virtual eternity, does it really matter if we save the climate, if we save the animals, if we save ourselves? I mean, does any of this really matter?
See, this is what I was talking about earlier. I don't think, like, it doesn't make a difference how much more of something you have. So if you have, let's say 10 units of suffering, it doesn't matter if there's 1,000 more units or 1 billion more units or 1 trillion more units of suffering if you can fix that 10 units. It wouldn't matter if that was the only 10 units in existence of suffering. That doesn't make it more of a concern or less of a concern.
All right,
the fact that there's more out there doesn't change the facts.
All right, let me if I personalize it, let's say how I'm going to spend a day. Okay, I've got like 24 hours in this day, and there are like a lot of problems that I have, a lot of like emotional problems. I'm not satisfied, all this, whatever, I mean, like a lot of dissatisfactions, and like, I mean, I could spend the day kind of like trying to like, lessen, be more satisfied with this, be more satisfied with that, be, less annoyed with this and that or that. Or I could spend the day just like forgetting about all that stuff, forgetting about trying to fix things and just enjoying, the day. So that would be my perspective. I mean, again, because like, if from the perspective, from both perspectives, either from the perspective that we have a soul that continues and that we don't, it's just like, again, like I'm conditioned to kind of like want to help. Trick, I understand your position that it's the pain that we want to alleviate pain, and that's how I function, that's how I operate. But I'm just questioning whether it's not kind of like nonetheless futile in a sense, or just so insignificant.
Well, this is where we don't agree. I mean, okay, so let's imagine, I guess, that there is a limited amount of pain and suffering, and you can solve that limited amount, and that's all that exists in the universe, and that's all that will ever exist. This limited amount of pain and suffering that you could fix, or you can not fix it. You have the two choices, fix the limited amount or not fix it, and then let it just keep going on, basically for the rest of eternity or whatever, however long the universe.
Right. All right. So yes. So I would agree with you. Definitely fix it. But our problem is, and this seems to be like the way of life. Fine. We fix these diseases we have now. Let's say in medicine, right? We've got polio vaccines. We've got vaccines for this and that and that. What do you know? Like climate change is coming. The temperature's getting hotter on the planet. All these superbugs are emerging. And so like for the next generations, they have maybe worse diseases to, in other words, like it's like it never ends.
Right. But I'm saying, okay, so in this scenario where you have just this limited amount that you fix and that's it, you do that. But you're saying because there's more of it, there's so much more of it that changes the equation, but it doesn't. It doesn't change the equation of the amount that you can fix.
Yeah.
Well,
I think I would agree.
Go ahead, Chandler.
Yeah. Here's an example. Like, okay, now let's take two scenarios. There's one world where everybody's happy, except there's this one person who's in extreme pain. Let's say they're caught in a bear trap, one of those metal traps that's on their leg and cutting into their skin, causing them intense pain. And you happen to be like 10 feet away. I have a feeling, you would try to take them out of that trap if you knew how, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Now let's take a slightly different scenario where everybody else on the planet is caught in a bear trap, and you're the one person who's not. Do you still try to get the person out of the trap that's 10 feet away from you?
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking. Because you do what you can with those who are closest to you that you have the ability to help, even if there's so much suffering elsewhere that you can't do anything about.
Right. The extra suffering doesn't change the facts of the situation. It doesn't change the facts about the one person suffering in the bear trap. So either you're gonna say it's okay for that person to continue suffering, or you're not.
Right.
All right, but let's take a less extreme example and let's apply it to ourselves. In other words, like we have whatever pains we have, physical pains, illnesses, whatever, and we could like really devote our lives to trying to get rid of all the pains that we have in our life, emotional, physical pains, all that. Or we could say, hey, well, I'm just gonna I'm not going to look at this stuff. I'm going to accept it. It's like tolerable. It's not really overwhelming. And I'm just going to like focus on enjoying my life.
So you have one scenario where you're going to overlook all the suffering and you're going to try to enjoy your life by doing that. And then the other one is you're going to try to change.
The other one is that I'm going to spend all my time trying to like fix every pain that I have, every physical pain, every emotional pain. I'm going to resolve all these conflicts, all this stuff.
Yeah. So it would be ideal if you could have both, but the problem is you can't. So you have to. I think there's a good midpoint. There's a good balancing act that we have to play to, because as soon as we hit a certain point of suffering, we're unable to contribute to the betterment of the rest of the people.
No, trick. But in this analogy, I think you're right about the balance, but it's like it just relates to our life. Let's say we can't possibly help anyone else, right, in this scenario, but we can either like, spend our time trying to like, lessen every physical and emotional pain we have, or we could say to ourselves, oh, it's good enough. I'm going to just focus on feeling better and better.
I don't understand what the difference is. Like if you're saying... the two are the same to me.
All right, for example, in my life, okay, I would love to like I'm a shy person. I was talking about this in Manhattan yesterday, and like my idea of bliss would be able to like go about everywhere and kind of like just talk to anybody and everyone and just like feel like, have this kind of like this connection with everyone. That's like a bliss, right? It's not like that. It's a kind of like a pain that I have. It's an emotional pain that I'm not the way I want to be. Now, I can spend a lot of time trying to get that way. It may or may not happen. I may spend years doing it. Or I could say, well, it'd be nice, but it's not necessary because it's not all that bad. And I'm just going to focus on.
So you're saying it's the difference between you changing your psychology about needing that or not. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's the difference between, again, relating it to ourselves, fixing ourselves, making ourselves like lessening pain or just, basically accepting the pain that we have and striving for greater and greater happiness and pleasure.
Right. So well, I mean, that's yeah. So that's a decision we'd have to make personally to see which would be better for us in the long run. But it all comes down to what's better for our well-being, right? So if it's better for our well-being to focus on the one thing, but we have to do it at the expense of other things, then we go with that. And if it's better to not focus on that one thing and go with other things, then that's better, right? So I'm not sure. Right. I don't see the problem.
I think we have the wrong metric here, or we should consider another one at least. If the sun went supernova now, in 2 or 3 days' time, pretty much all suffering on Earth will be eliminated.
Yes.
Okay. So life is suffering.
Yes.
So, to go all Buddhist on you. So,
all right, so that reminds me.
Having said that, But why not? Why not take a look at trying to increase inverted commas happiness rather than eliminate suffering? And I don't particularly just mean my own personal happiness, but overall.
Yeah,
right. So how do you increase happiness without reducing suffering is the problem. So
without persuade, you're not going to eliminate suffering. Trust me.
I didn't even say eliminate, but we could drastically reduce it, right?
Happiness becomes blah.
That's not necessarily true.
All right, the way I'm doing it in my life, is like, all right, we're all imperfect in so many ways. We could just like, resolve so many issues. We could perfect our health. We can get to the gym every day, eat more healthy, all this stuff. But like in my life, what I've found, or especially over the last 2 years, is like, if I pretty much, for the most part, accept and not try to resolve what's wrong with me and just seek greater, more and more happiness, for me, that has worked. That has worked profoundly over the last 2 years. You find out that, there's still things that I have to accept about not just myself, about the world, this animal cruelty and stuff. But as long as I'm kind of like just reaching for more and more happiness, that it's like an equation, it's a calculus. To the extent that I'm increasing my happiness, this unhappiness or displeasure is kind of like, in proportion and becoming less and less.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there, George. There's a certain extent where you can attain pleasure that's great, that makes it more bearable to put up with the suffering.
And this is what the people like Buddha and these guys like that advocate enlightenment. I think that's what a lot of enlightenment is. It's like, it's not like you become callous. You still try to help people, but it's like, you just kind of like you're beyond this attachment to trying to make things better and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I think that would be
attachment to avoiding pain.
Yeah, I think personally that would be great. So there's two different issues we're talking about. We're talking about our personal, how we can be more happy, right? But how we can do that not at the expense of others as well. So someone who is extremely wealthy might be able to use that wealth to put themselves inside of a bubble and not help the world, basically. That they could probably be extremely happy doing that, right? Just ignoring all the problems of the world, but that comes at an expense as well. So
right, a trick tying this into where we started with like how to get people to be more compassionate toward animals with the factory farms. That actually may be an avenue that may not be the whole solution, but part of it. In other words, like people don't care about animals because they're not all that happy. And like, if like, spending more money on meat that's been, treated humanely is going to like impinge on their happiness, they're not going to do it. So like, to the extent I think that people can become happier, then they've got more of what they want. And then they can look around them and see, well, oh yeah, I can help this. I've got what I want, so I can spend more on whatever.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of in vitro meat. So that's just cultured meat that doesn't cause any harm, basically. I'm a big proponent of that, even though it's still eating meat. So it's not necessarily the eating meat part that's the big problem. It's the suffering.
Do you know how far away we are? Because
we're getting there. We're getting there. We've cultured meat. We have cultured meat. Now right now it's just very expensive. So it's just a matter of being able to mass. What's that?
We can culture organs.
Practically, we're almost at that level.
But because I haven't researched this, so in other words, like it's cost prohibitive right now. But right. I wonder if the cost prohibition has to do with marketing. In other words, like if everybody decided, oh yeah, we're going to eat this stuff, then all of a sudden there'd be a market, and all of a sudden they can, buy it for the same price we buy this regular meat for.
Yeah, I mean it's because it's so anything new is going to be cost prohibitive. You get it like a new type of fancy vehicle, it's cost prohibitive. Like electric cars, for example, were cost prohibitive at one point, and now. They're starting to become mainstream finally, and now they're becoming the same as same cost as any other car.
Long to get here.
Right.
Excuse my slang. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thing because, like, I don't even know very much about the cultured meat, because I sure have no use of it. I'm fine eating plants. But Trick, do you know like how that actually works? Like, how is it that they can grow that without getting it from living animals?
Well, they already have the cells required, so they don't need. Once you have a certain amount of cells, you don't need to acquire any more cells from animals. You just use existing cells, and you can reproduce those cells at a constant rate, basically. So it's just a matter of a reproduction of existing cells. Same thing with like stem cells and things like that. So
that might be the answer to this whole animal cruelty thing. Yeah, it might be. In other words, like people can make a lot of money on it. You know, they could just transition their investments from these factory farms to these like culture labs.
Yeah, and it solves a lot of problems. It solves the problems with those people that say, oh, we need meat for certain vitamins and things like that. So it solves that problem. It solves the problem for people that just can't get past the psychology of not eating meat, right? So it solves that problem. Just solves a number of problems once we get there, but we're just not there yet.
We're close.
Now I think once we're not there in the mass production phase yet, but I think once we are there, I think eating meat in a different way will become something that's going to be looked down upon, right? So I think things will change in mindsets at that point.
Again, your language looked down upon. But what I was going to say is essentially what's going to happen is all the different breeds of farm animals we have for food will sort of verge on extinction.
Right. They'll verge on extinction, right? Because we won't be mass produced. We won't be forcing them to give birth anymore.
So the countrysides with nice sheep on them and cattle.
Yeah, I mean, we could establish preserves. We have, I think, enough land on the planet to do that. But, they wouldn't be like grazing, on our front lawns and stuff.
Yeah, but then again, who's going to pay for it?
That's
what do you mean?
Problem. Always a pay.
Well, actually, you want to know something? The livestock industry is a greater contributor to climate change than transportation and I think some other major industry. It's hugely costly in terms of water consumption, energy consumption. So,
I'd be very careful about the water consumption.
No,
Why?
it takes like 1,000 gallons to produce a pound of beef, where it takes maybe 100 gallons or something to produce a pound of, let's say, soy.
I would be very careful about those numbers, George.
All right, why?
Why?
Sorry?
Why?
Rick?
Why?
Because that includes rainfall on the land.
Oh yeah, well yeah, but no. In factory farms, I mean, they pump this water in like from lakes and reservoirs and stuff. This is like
Yeah, I mean, for factory farms, water is trucked in basically. You need a constant supply of water and it's not just that. It's just a pound of beef. You have to feed basically cattle and things like that, and so it's the agriculture of the plant agriculture that is increased with the beef culture. So it's just kind of a double whammy as well.
Yeah, see, the point is, and this actually may be good news for us guys, and here's why. Because think about this: when you consider how costly it is to breed the animals and grow all the plants to feed them all that time, then when the cultured meat does become mainstream, it could end up eventually becoming so much cheaper to produce that then becomes the standard. Because it's not at all practical, the animal agriculture, aside from the harms of climate change.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the key, Chandler.
You still have to wait for the cultured meat to grow and things like that, and you still have to, it's kind of like growing plants basically. So you
but I'm curious. I'm curious as to like, whether this is like really, really cost prohibitive because there isn't a market. Because like, if that's the case, it's not like the technology isn't already there. It's just like nobody's talking about it because like, just like people aren't, industries don't want to talk about climate change. The conventional factory farms don't want this information out about cultured meat.
Yeah, and I also think there's a psychological factor there as well. Like I think people who eat meat right now might look down upon eating cultured meat just because it's not real. Like it's just, I don't know. People have weird ideas.
I think the aspect of it is you'll have the same GM crowd. So get cultured meat that you would have against GM crops.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, but I mean, ideally, because like there's so many, I've been researching this because I'm preparing to do a series on veganism, and our approach is going to be to a great extent to make the case that going vegan is so much healthier, that meat creates so many diseases. So I mean, like if we can engineer the meat, there'd be like the people would be against like the GMOs and stuff. But if we can engineer the meat to not create those diseases, I think that would outweigh the kind of like philosophical, ideological arguments against it.
Well, they also say that, at least according to the people in the industry, so it's hard to tell, right? But they do say that cultured meat, that in vitro meat is more healthy in a number of regards, in regards to the fat level content, and in regards to not needing hormones, because most meat you are animals pumped with hormones that cause all these basically problems within the meat, so that cause cancer and things like that. So they say that it's definitely a healthier meat to eat. So.
Yeah, it seems like so much of what we talk about, requires people to be better than we are. And we should explore that in some episode. How do you just like, ramp up the conscience of people?
Right.
Yeah.
So to ramp up the conscience of people to be just like you, George?
Well, no, not. I mean, they don't have to be just as good, just at least in the ballpark.
Just as good.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually a very interesting talk, because there's all these different aspects. Like, because I'm interested, in what is more compelling for people. Because the psychology, like, and when the culture meat does become more mainstream, like, how are people going to react to that?
Right.
I'm very curious how it plays out.
Yuri, once it is popularized, which it's going to happen. What do you think? Are you going to eat cultured meat?
I would say technically it's a certainty, and marketing depends on the salesmanship.
But you'd eat it. You'd eat it, right?
I'd eat it, yeah.
Okay.
I have no objection against GM products. I have no.
Okay.
The only thing is there's always going to be an unexpected outcome, or so something we're not going to foresee, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, it's like that for all food, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and like in regards to the health thing, like a lot of people today, they're aware that like smoking cigarettes causes lung cancer, yet it doesn't stop them, and I think that's an interesting thing too, because like, and a lot of people, for example, and we've talked about this before, guys, about people are obese. And they know they need to lose weight because it's unhealthy, but they can't seem to do it. And there's a variety of factors there too. I mean, because people are complex, and the reasons why they are either unwilling or unable or both to do something, is very complicated. Which is why so few people even discuss it or try to learn about it, because it's time consuming.
Oh yeah, I'm a vegan, but I'm not a healthy vegan. I don't focus on health. I should be more healthy. I want to be more healthy. I want to eat like just raw vegetables and things like that, but chips and stuff like that, I just, I'm still an unhealthy vegan. I'll eat French fries, things like that aren't, cooked in lard or anything like that. But it's just you understand that you're eating unhealthy food, but yet you're still taking in before the pleasure of the food anyway. You're saying screw it, So that's kind of the problem with fully promoting veganism just under the guise of, or the idea of that it's the more healthy option.
Right. There are problems with it because it doesn't. I don't think it's that effective.
Yeah.
I think I'm telling you, like here in the United States, 80-90% of people believe in God or a higher power. A lot of them believe in hell. You scare the hell out of them.
Yeah, George's idea, like where they go to hell if they eat animals, like
that's what they believe. Yeah, you could get them to you could say like, how is God like? You show them pictures of animals being tortured. You get them to understand that these animals are like suffering more than your dog and cat, right? And then you ask them, how is God going to let you into heaven when you're doing this stuff?
Yeah.
My cat, when it's not fed on time, is really suffering. I trust me, he tells me all the time.
What's that?
My cat, when he's not fed on time, is really suffering.
The same thing with my cat. My cat, well, it meows me to death, and when I walk in the house, it pretty much get an earful, Because it's always like, really, Dewan? That's why I had, see this guy? This is why I have him muted.
What the heck?
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, guys, this has actually been a very good talk. Did you guys? Was it interesting to you guys?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because
I think so. Because essentially, what we're exploring is how do we get people to do the right thing, the moral thing, the compassionate thing, and whether it's like animals or whatever it is, it's a challenge. It's like it's really the problem that still needs to be figured out.
Yeah, Yuri, how do we get people to do the moral thing, Yuri? The moral thing.
Oh man, I know Yuri doesn't like it, but we're all trying to be moral, and he's proud of being amoral, so good for him.
Yeah, someone's got to stick up for the carnivores.
Well, it makes the podcast interesting, I suppose. I think maybe we'll have to next week. We'll have to do the thing about the science and the emotional objectivity or whatever. Because this actually went on a long time. So what's your idea for next week, George?
Let's go with that. Let's go with let's just not walk the walk. Let's not talk the talk. Let's walk the walk. How do we kind of better exercise this no free will philosophy reality, and especially within the context of scientific philosophical debates. Yeah,
it sounds good. I might have to look over those emails again. So that sounds like a really good plan. Was there anything anyone else wanted to say before we officially end this episode?
I got nothing except my cousin. Yo, seriously. Maybe I'll have him on the podcast one day.
Hey, WSD.
He could definitely make it. Yeah, he could definitely make it interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. He's already making it interesting.
Yeah, because if I have these up, that means it's muted. See? Yeah, I think he'd be.
We can hear him. We can hear him in the background.
Yep, he's loud. Yeah, WSD's cousin is really loud. So, yeah. Well, I guess anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this bizarre talk about, about why we eat certain animals, not others, and about animal suffering and the psychology of why people are conditioned to do certain things and others. And we discussed cultured meat, morality. I mean, we covered just everything. We were all over the place, but I enjoyed it. So I hope you learned something. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.